Aloha, spooky nerds, and welcome to the Paranormal Pop Culture Hour. Here at Den of Geek, I'm your host, Aaron Sagers, journalist, researcher of all things weird, and currently you can see me on Paranormal Caught on Camera on Travel Channel and Discovery Plus. And hey, good news about that. We are officially about to begin filming our 5th season, so very excited about that. So keep an eye out for more news on that. I'm excited, super excited about this talk today because I've been keeping track of this film for a while. And also, I really enjoyed the director Josh Ruben's last film, Scare Me, and I love a good werewolf movie. But this isn't just any good werewolf movie. It's also a good mystery movie, a murder mystery movie. It's called Werewolves Within. And it's basically like Clue, except with lycanthropes and sort of set part-time in the Overlook Hotel. And it's based on a Ubisoft VR video game of the same name. And it has just a really big cast of actors. You're going to recognize each of them from somewhere, which makes the mystery all the more exciting. It's in theaters on June 25th and digital rental and VOD on July 2nd, 2021. And let me introduce our two guests. Josh Ruben is an award-winning actor. He's a writer, a director. He is feature film Scare Me. He wrote, he directed, and he starred in alongside Aya Cash and Chris Redd. It debuted at the 2020 Sundance Film Festival, and it also had the horror comedy element to it, but had a balance of the two things. And that premiered on Shudder, which is the horror platform from AMC. And Mishna Wolff, it started as a comedian and live storyteller. Her best-selling, critically acclaimed memoir, I'm Down. It's hilarious. It's touching. It's also taught at high schools and colleges throughout America and sold at the Northwest African American Museum and the Nobel Peace Museum in Oslo, Norway. She's a contributor to NPR and alumna of the Sundance Screenwriters Lab and the Sundance Episodic Lab, and a recent recipient of the Indian Paintbrush Fellowship and the Ubisoft Women's Fellowship. So without further ado, I'm going to bring them in. And I also want you guys to have some questions ready because I'm going to throw them at these guys. So without further ado, Mishna Wolff, welcome to the stream. And Josh Ruben, hello, sir. Hello, Mishna. Thanks for joining me, guys. Okay.
Thanks for having us.
Hi.
Yeah, well,
I should put my whole name. I now see that.
Well, we know who you are. We know who you are. Let me begin by saying I really enjoyed the movie. I have already watched it a couple times, and it is just like a nice balance of both the horror and comedy without tipping too far in one direction or the other. So I need to ask, by what were the werewolves that you loved growing up? Mishna, you can begin since your last name is Wolff. I think that entitles you to go first.
God, there's so many. The Howling, for sure. Joe Dante's The Howling. Definitely Wolfen, starring Albert Finney. That's a great werewolf story. He's actually wasted in that movie as well. I would say Silver Bullet has a fun kid story in it. That's a really good one. Obviously, American Werewolf in London. But I was always like, more decaying humans. Can we get more decaying humans on the screen? I feel like he uses them so sparingly. I could have done twice as many decaying humans. And the reboots never really touched me. But, hopefully Werewolves Within will feel like a sort of a new breath of life into the 80s werewolf movie.
A reinvigoration of the werewolf genre. I hope so. I think it definitely can. And I'm just going to call out, I don't know, I'm getting a little bit of audio static coming back in. I don't know if you guys can hear me okay. So just flag me if you're getting some static. And I'm going to go ahead and just eschew these headphones entirely just in case it's me. But Josh, why don't you take that? What kind of werewolf movies were you into as a kid, or even now? What scratched your lycanthropic itch?
Claude even. I mean, I the first one that really hit me was the guy in Monster Squad. He was like a blue collar, uh, everyday fella who you really seemed to feel his like excruciating pain and torment, and that really hit me. There was something about obviously the kids that kind of went after all the entities in that movie, but the werewolf in that one was particularly terrifying, and so much of it came through his performance. So I think between him and the one in Silver Bullet, ridiculous as it ultimately ended up looking, that is a dreadful, as in like a good dreadful, terrifying film. It really does seem like, it really felt like what would really happen if you and your drunk uncle had to take on a lichen. And that those both really, really freaked me out as kids. And then, later in life, I mean, my most recent favorite is Late Phases. I think that movie is so good. It's so brilliant. It's also a Hudson Valley production. I was shocked by how much I love that one. That's a new discovery.
Well, I too am a Monster Squad kid, and and taught us two important things out of that movie: Stephen King rules, and also Wolfman's Got Nards. But and I agree that werewolf in that movie was, I think it was played by, I forget the actor's name, but this excellent character actor. So you kind of already recognized him, but it lent credence to that pain that he was going through. But another kind of recent werewolf movie that I happen to really enjoy is Ginger Snaps, and that kind of goes in the direction of it's more female led, it's more women led. So I mean, I guess Mishna, when you were writing this, you have these characters that anyone could be the werewolf in it. Was that sort of in the back of your mind that you're like, you know what, there's just not enough women badasses and women taking the helm in these werewolf films?
Sure. I mean, I think the movie started out with a lot of thinking about archetypes, and I happen to love movies with pretty clearly drawn archetypes. I like archetypes. I feel like it's reassuring when you walk into a movie and you feel like, oh, I know who that guy is. And I like upsetting archetypes and having little things be different about the archetype than you expect. But feminism certainly plays a role in those archetypes, and women in film haven't always been, given life and death stakes. So that was a huge thing that I was thinking of. I mean, I love female-led movies and with life and death stakes, and that has often led me to the pantheon of Chinese and Japanese movies, because there's just not a lot of life and death stakes in women's roles in American movies. So that was definitely something I was thinking about. But I have not seen Ginger Snaps.
I would recommend it. I enjoy it. And Josh, I'm gonna ask you a question, but Mishna, first, I think you might have to just kill your earbuds and mic and just go with whatever audio you've got naturally from your laptop. I think we're getting interference coming in from that. I'm terribly sorry. And Josh, let me ask you, I was actually just watching Scare Me Again the other day, and it was with a friend who hadn't seen it. This was even before this was set up. And there is certainly that werewolf sequence in Scare Me. Did that end up, was that in a strange way end up being a bit of an audition of sorts for Werewolves Within, or how did that kind of synchronicity play out?
Pray. I don't know why I started to say pray for it. It was pray for coincidence. It was all coincidence. It was crazy coincidence that was like Fred's story. Coincidence that, it ended up being the case that, my second film is called Werewolves Within. I think it ended up being the case in Scare Me because it is the creature that freaks me out the most. And that story, silly as it is, the one that Fred tells, the first one out in Scare Me is an idea I've had in the back of my head forever that just kind of collects cobwebs. And I thought, I'll just, knock it out in story form messily through this emasculated anti-hero. And yeah, it's all crazy coincidence, and I'm happy to find my brand in recessed shadows and creatures in the dark and quirky emasculated human beings. I think I'd be fine to tell those stories again and again.
And set in cold settings inspired me to wear like my Overlook Hotel tiki shirt today because it's a recurring theme. Mishna, what's kind of your mission as far as adapting video game adaptations? Let's face it, are so often doomed, and they're not very good movies. So, what was your approach? Was it to just sort of toss away the entire game? Was it to what elements do you think were important to preserve from the VR game?
The feel. I mean, I feel like that was always the thing. I mean, all screenwriters who you talk to about adaptations, and they talk about like, what do you owe the source material? I think you owe it the feel. And I feel like certainly in the midpoint of the movie, when everyone's huddled in the inn and they're trying to ferret out who the werewolf is, it does feel like that video game, even though it's a different era. There are very different archetypes. They sort of play more to the topical American issues. I think that feel is still there from the video game. And that was the thing that, I knew I wanted to honor in the adaptation. And I think it's worth honoring. Like, I think it was a fun game. And, the idea of private justice is so baked into the game that it just lent itself so well to these sort of what Josh dimly lit so beautifully. These scenes around the fireplace where, people are making this faulty reasoning.
Oh, Aaron, you're muted. I'm trying to read your
almost professional here, Josh. It's
there you go.
It's after doing many of these things, apparently this still happens. But I was saying that I played the video game. I find it fun to play, but that kind of paranoia element really comes to life within the film. But do you think werewolves and murder mysteries kind of go hand in hand? Because it almost feels like there is this relationship between the two. Mishna, do you want to take that first?
I think you're right that there is this relationship between the two, but I think when I was conceiving it, it felt totally brand new. So, it feels really like, oh yeah, that's obvious in hindsight. But at the time when Werewolves Within the video game was keeping me up at night, and I was like, what if, it didn't seem intrinsically linked. You know what I mean? I think it does. I think it really does on the back end, but on the front end, it was sort of hard to bake the two together. Certainly in my mind, the how-to was, it was a challenge that I, sort of questioned whether or not I could get it done.
Mm-hmm. What's your take on it, Josh, with the connection between, werewolves and murder mystery? Just the element of like deception is such a part of the whole werewolf thing. I mean, also we see it within zombies. People, the ones that are covering the zombie bite, or even the thing, who's really the monster. But has that been something that you've always seen, this connection between the deception, the murder mystery, and werewolves?
Well, I've always loved, going back to Silver Bullet, there you have that priest character who, once it was sort of revealed that he was the big bad, it became that kind of, digging your fingernails into your knees, like, oh my God, they have no idea they're in the presence of this awful thing. And that's terrifying, more so than a vampire, pretty much anything else. It's the true movie monster where, they can walk amongst us during the day and be our brother, best friend, mother, father, whatever, but turn out to be, the most violent thing and terrifying thing imaginable. So, yeah, it makes sense, in the allegory of it all, the monster within us all, and the fact that in a film like this, technically everyone can be implicated, that technically in the allegory and the theme of it all, we all have violent, dreadful thoughts every once in a while when pushed to our limits. I mean, even at some point, Sam's character, as wonderful a protagonist as he is, he's sort of pushed to his limit as well. I mean, every character could have reason to be a werewolf, hence the kind of, wonderful mystery of it all. But it played lockstep for me. I mean, it's a testament to Mishna's incredible work. I mean, for me, I just opened it, was just like, this feels like Arachnophobia and Fargo. I just want to play in this. And oh my gosh, and it's a creature feature, and it's, smarter than I could possibly conceive.
Well, that's a perfect setup because we actually have a clip from the movie. So let us throw to that, and I'll meet you guys on the other side.
Dr. Ellis?
I told you she's probably tanked.
Touch this door again, I'll shoot. Again.
Dr. Ellis? Hey, knock the damn lock, please. Look, we need answers.
It didn't disappear.
What did you say? It didn't just... Shh.
What?
It's not Emerson Flint. It's one of you.
What the hell is that supposed to mean?
Okay, well,
What did her eyeball say?
look, we don't understand.
Could you please come out?
I'm afraid I can't do that, Ranger Wheeler. You could be one of them.
What is it? Shh.
One of what?
Lycanthrope.
A what?
Lycanthrope.
A werewolf.
The roads are effed. Something's wrong with the generator. Also, there's a dead body under your porch.
I'm gonna go get a croissant.
Out of curiosity, who is packing? We having a good old-fashioned sleepover.
With guns, though.
With guns, yes. Everybody's going, how the heck? Not littering, I'm just excited.
Not judging, just watching it.
All right. And we lost Josh, but he is potentially back. I don't know what's going on. All right.
Today it's just like, it's a technical wash. Like, let's just say it's kind of like the start of a horror movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. The mic doesn't work.
Yeah, Josh, I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't see you, so your mic might be out. But there you are.
I'm sorry. Unstable internet here in the Hudson Valley. Perfect setting for murder mystery.
Yeah.
We were just joking that the technical difficulties felt like the setup for where is Josh? Where did he go?
And yeah, he's in a new setting, a scene change. I like it.
Yeah, it's more like noises off at this point,
Well, and again, so Werewolves Within, starring Sam Richardson, who's also executive producer on this, which we know from Veep, Milana Weintraub from This Is Us, George Basil, Crashing, Sarah Burns from Barry, Michael Chernus from Tommy, Catherine Curtin from Orange is the New Black, Wayne Duvall, The Hunt, Harvey Gillian from What We Do in the Shadows, Rebecca Henderson, Russian Doll, Cheyenne Jackson from 30 Rock, and American Horror Story, Michaela Watkins from Brittany Runs a Marathon, and Glenn Flesher from True Detective. This is an incredible cast. This is really, you guys assembled an incredible cast from this. And, I'm just kind of curious, when you're putting together, from a casting perspective, each of these actors really are recognizable. Each have the capability to steal scenes. I guess, Josh, was that really sort of the approach that you wanted to get each kind of face into these roles that would be the believable werewolf, the werewolf that is within that we're trying to find?
I mean, before anything else, it's, my task to Gail Keller was a no assholes policy. I just wanted to work with like good human beings who were also crazy talented. So I made my dream listed people, yes, but also folks who, in some cases came from the live theater world that understand and love the summer stock of it all, or in this case, winter stock. And we're sort of, versatile. I love the cross-pollination of actors that we have, folks from Broadway to Coen Brothers rotation troupe folks like, Wayne Duvall and the like. Everything was about, who do I want to work with who's a great person? We could like go into the winter trenches and Fleischmann's and make a thing. But yes, I mean, everyone is inordinately talented. Everyone's strengths is just, they're out of control. And, buoyed by the fact that they all got along, I still can't believe that they all loved each other as much as they did and wanted to support each other as much as they did. It blows my mind, and I'm grateful that buoyancy shows on screen. I mean, it really does.
And Mishna, I mentioned Clue at the top because for me, even of course the movie, but even the board game when I was a kid, we were kind of challenged to tell the stories of those characters in our own mind, but they were all so colorful and it felt fully fleshed out. When you're setting out to create this roster of potential suspects, what was kind of going through your mind as far as that goes? I mean, you mentioned archetypes earlier, but did you know you needed this type, that type? Like, what was kind of the game plan as far as crafting these characters?
So I wanted them to represent certain ideologies that were recognizable to the audience and then not take a side. So that was really important to me, is just to have sort of this tapestry of America and not take a side. And that was really important. It was also like, I knew that if we created a funny ensemble, we wouldn't need like a Tom Cruise. So, it was really great to have enough of an ensemble so that you could just use like really funny, talented people that are, in my mind, stars in their own right, but that don't unlock, $30 million, $100 million of financing. So that was also like a little strategic. If you look at the old Clue, like none of those actors were necessarily opening movies at that moment in their career, but they are so like, they will, Martin Mull will always be Colonel Mustard to me, and, Colleen Camp will always be Yvette the Maid. It's just these characters are cemented in my mind as being these archetypes in such a visceral way that if I saw any of them on the street, I know they've done myriad other things, but I think I'd probably shout out their Clue character first.
No, I mean, Tim, I think there was the meme going around that you can tell which era you were born based on which Tim Curry character you love the most. And, mine is, it's a toss up between Pennywise and then Tim Curry from Clue for me. But but the opposite of that, I guess, the opposite of Pennywise is Sam Richardson's Finn is the new ranger in town. And he's a nice guy. And yet, I mean, why are we suspicious of nice guys? I mean, the nice guys finish last, but also a person can be too good to be true. So why are we so suspicious of the nice people out there? And can a person be too good to be true? I'm going to start with you on that, Mishna.
Well, yeah, a person can be too good to be true. Like, my aunt has a saying, ones don't marry tens. You know what I mean? If he looks like a real jerk and she looks like a real, like a real Madonna, it's got to be, there's something you're not getting that happens at home. But that is totally apropos of nothing. I guess the nice guy thing, it's like, there's a couple nice guys in this movie that are suspicious. And the reason Finn is such a nice guy is because the movie that we fashioned is his worst nightmare. He's afraid of conflict. He's a nice guy and he's about to enter like the epicenter of meanness. And, this movie's designed to torture him and break him. And it almost does. So I think that's a huge part of it. And God, I'm always worried about spoilers, but it's really important that he be like the least well-equipped person for a town in this much conflict.
And without spoiling anything, I have to say that one of my favorite elements of this is that the nice guy is quoting Mr. Rogers to essentially the quint except survivalist character played by Glenn Fleshel, who does just Fleshler, sorry, who does just an amazing job in that role as well. But Josh, talk to me about good guys, because also Flynn is sort of the opposite of Sam, right? From Scare Me, right? Or maybe he's not. Take that whole nice guy question.
I mean, where do you want me to start? It's quite a spectrum. Nice guys have werewolves within them. Mean guys have werewolves within them. It's just fascinating to play with the archetype, because I think Bundy was a nice guy, at least in his circle, and Gacy. So it's fun to play with that, those kind of expectations. And in this kind of ensemble, I think, again, just wanting to build in a means to implicate everyone was an exciting challenge, and also to do that for Finn at some point. I mean, there's a wonderful moment, without giving anything away, where even this wonderful protagonist reaches a breaking point where he has to match everyone else, and it should raise the question, well, shit, could it be the nicest character of all? Have they broken? Will there be that kind of reveal? And people should be asking that questions if we've done our job right. But playing with those expectations is the most fun thing, and yet the real exciting piece of this is that the great majority of folks we've talked to don't expect, or don't quite can't quite calculate who the werewolf actually is, which is very exciting.
Could this have gone a different way? I mean, was there any version of this movie, either from Mishna when you were working on the script to when you were actually putting it together, where there may not have been a werewolf? I mean, I think it's safe to say that there's a werewolf in this, and that comes out in the publicity materials now. But was there a version of this movie where there wasn't an actual werewolf?
No. No. I mean, I thought about going there and just having it be like more cerebral and meta, and but I always start everything with the end in mind. I don't know why. I'm a backwards worker. So when I had the end, I was like, there's a movie here. But I don't have I didn't never have the beginning of something and say, oh, this is a movie. So I always sort of was working backwards from that ending.
So there was never there was never a version of this movie where perhaps the ultimate werewolf is someone else. There's no alternate endings to this film.
No, I think the work was always making that ending land and work, and putting in enough Easter eggs, but then also kicking enough dirt over them so that you could enjoy it maybe a second time and be like, how did I miss this? So I think that's part of the fun of these movies a little bit, is the second time, like, oh man, it was so obvious.
Sorry.
But it's not until you, I mean, that's the fun, that's the crafty nerd part of screenwriting. Yeah.
And I see Josh is doing a Blair Witch Project move on us right now. Wait. Oh, he's back there. He's so scared.
Sorry. Josh! My internet.
Yeah, Josh, I was actually going to ask, when, and I want to hear from you as well, Mishna, but Josh began, talk about working with one another on this. We know that the ending is the ending that Mishna wrote, but were there any other kind of evolutions with the script? And just talk a little bit about your dynamic together on this.
I mean, from my standpoint, especially starting in this whole business, as an actor and coming up on the other side of the camera, or on that side of the camera where one is used to frustrations as an actor being cattle and the mythology of the steamrolled writer. I went into this process wanting Mishna as involved as Mishna wanted to be. I relied on Mishna, we like from our coffee to other sort of frustrations and commiserations and inspiration and the like, and then through the editing process too, to share cuts and say, oh gosh, I need your sort of fresh eyes now that I've taken this thing, made it, and applied the aesthetics and editing style to it and the like. I think it was as collaborative as I probably could have stood to make it from my end, considering too that I had 8 bosses. That's the other thing about the studio film, despite the fact that it is quite, the Blumhouse model. Ubisoft wrote the check, but it was such a collaborative effort. So I don't know, hopefully you'll have to hear from Misha. Hopefully she feels like it was as involved as could be. I could never imagine coming aboard something as a writer, having spent so much time on something, and then for a director to come in, or anyone to come in and go, oh, cool, and now introduce some, crazy new idea. Okay, now everyone is a penguin. I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Yeah, Josh was super collaborative. And he had some tweaks on the ending. I mean, it's the werewolf is the werewolf, and that didn't change, but he made some really nice changes to the ending, and I thought it worked really quite well. And there were some budgetary concerns there too. There was like a lot of moving parts. I felt like my script was just there to attract the director. I mean, I really felt like that was the job of my script is to get to get the other players involved, hopefully the cast and the director, and then it becomes a blueprint for a bigger commodity that involves tons more people, a lot more money. But Josh was really, really collaborative in every sense of the word all the way through. So, I felt very respected and, more than I even needed to be. I felt very involved. It was really nice.
I'm a Cancer, so it's just the over empathy. I'm a raw nerve, you know what I mean? I can't not. I overdo it. Lot too much sacrifice. I think that was kind of the wild thing to see the process and to come in, that this was my, biggest gig to date as a filmmaker, and to see it go, here's a script that came up through this development process, through this fellowship program, and then to go through the budgetary conversations, and then to have, the producerial process of how can we consolidate characters, sequences, changing things up until the last minute, through to the process, changing things for weather, consolidating sequences. It was that level of thinking on one is a boot camp.
Well, I think that regardless of how many films someone has under their belt, werewolf movies, creature features and werewolf movies are so challenging, right? Because you're building the tension, and sometimes the scariest part is when you don't see the monster, but eventually you got to show your hands. And that is that moment when you can lose the audience, right? Or it cannot, impact the way you want it to be. I'm just curious to hear from you about the challenges of the werewolf considerations, some of the challenges with tackling a werewolf movie, and the things that you were trying to keep in mind to keep it authentic, but also, let's face it, under budget. Josh, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess, Landis did this very, very well before, and so did Joe Dante, as did the filmmakers of Bad Moon and Ginger Snaps. I had my own kind of mandate is sort of like a Mike Nichols-like principle. And I only bring him up because he, believe it or not, was one of my instructors 100 years ago when I went to acting school. He had an acting program in New York. he would always say, what would really happen if, or what would it really be like if, and within the confines of that, you know, with all of my actors, they can play jazz within the sort of confines of, you know, not getting caught trying to be funny and also playing the terror for real. And so when it came down to kind of werewolf at all, it's like, well, we don't need to see skin breaking. We know what this is going to be. We can kind of evoke that sort of, you know, visceral transformation and the terror of it all. But let's just kind of get to it, you know, at that point. So when it came to, you know, the werewolf itself, there was nothing too extravagant I felt like we owed anyone. It was just like, oh shit, this is going to happen. And also within the mythology of this character, of this thing, and how fast it killed, it was fun to think about it, you know, having control over its changing as part of its, again, mythology and how it sort of went about its business.
That was such a conversation in the room too about, can it control? It can't control. How come it can't control? It's like, it doesn't matter. Trust me.
Yeah. All those conversations are so funny too. Like whenever anyone on, like within the cast or crew was like, but you know, why would the villain be standing in the street sort of staring at them and not just start shooting? And it's like, because it's a comic book movie, you know, because it's a video game movie. This is what the villains do. This is what happens in a world where there are werewolves. No one will be writing letters meanly if they're along for the ride, you know, if they feel taken care of, whether the claws retract or extend, whether they change quickly or not. It's just got to be a fun ride, right?
Yeah.
And I think the creature features that Josh and I grew up loving were always done a little bit on the cheap, with the exception of like maybe The Thing and Alien, which were really crazy expensive. But I think that's part of the fun of the creature feature, to me at least. I love Grindhouse movie with you know, Toxic Avenger and, you know, just these like really dirt cheap movies have been some of my favorites.
Yeah, and I most certainly agree. I'm, you know, a Creature of the Black Lagoon super fan, and you know, so much can be done with just a hand in the water as opposed to always showing the full creature. Now, I mean, Josh mentioned the power. This is a world where people believe in werewolves, but sort of. I mean, this is a world where people. I mean, we live in a world where people still believe in werewolves in certain parts of this globe, or man beasts, you know, and they have believed in them for millennia. And there's this element of, when things get critical, we look for explanations. Even if the monster is real, it's still an explanation that we latch onto. I'm just kind of curious if that's something that each of you thought about, because there is something quite relevant about this movie, watching it in 2021. Is that something that you thought about at all, Mishna, when you were writing this?
Oh, the skepticism was part of the whole fabric of the movie. It's just people's skepticism about a werewolf. Or you know, I think Sarah Burns said, "What is this dumbass island?" Because you know you know, there's so many reasons not to believe it's a werewolf. So I always thought the fun part of it would be the skepticism, where you, the audience, know it's a werewolf, but the audience is sort of behind the audience. I mean, the audience. No, sorry. The characters are behind the audience.
Yeah. And I mean, Josh, like, I want you to add to that as well. But, you know, with Scare Me, you touched on this element of, even before people were using the word incel in mainstream culture, you know, you touch on this incel character. And now this is neighbor against neighbor, people either hiding the truth or rejecting it. The idea that being grouped together can lead to your own death. I mean, you could not have predicted the relevancy of this. So how is it landing for you now?
It's pretty phenomenal. You know, when people like Michaela Watkins improvise a line like, you know, Antifa, you think, oh, that's going to be the shelf life joke that will end up on the cutting room floor. And it's like, no, it remains to be one of the more relevant pieces of the film and of this character. I mean, she's a Karen. She was a Karen before the Karen thing. Yeah, and with incel, it's funny too, because Aya Cash was the first one. She improvised that line, "What are you, an incel?" I didn't know what the word meant, and Fred, quite was. Yeah, it's unfortunate how relevant it is, but I'm thrilled that it is, because I'd like to think that the film is a ride. So hopefully, regardless of what people take away from it, regardless of the relevance of it all, I'd like to think that it's coming out at a time where, after the trauma of it all, from the insurrection through the pandemic, that people can at least like forget the trauma of the past 16 and a half months and sort of like go for the ride. And this, we're offering less bleak fare. We're offering more fun fare coming out of this kind of, this dark chapter. Yeah, it's both wonderful and terrifying that it's so relevant, and will remain to be. There will always be people who are narrow-minded in small corners of the world, and narrow-minded in the most liberal corners of the world as well. The newcomers are no better than the townies in some cases. In many cases in the film, I love what Mishna says. It's not choosing a side to becomes a relevant issue in itself, because everyone is ultimately kind of selfish, and it remains to be seen, or it's a true thing, unfortunately, that a good neighbor is actually quite hard to find. Like a good person through and through. My God, if you can find them, if you can find the real Mr. Rogers every once in a while, the real Finn, good on you.
Yeah, and I think we were kind of banking that people would be ready to laugh at everything that's gone on at this point, that people would be ready. Like, can we make fun of it now? Is it too soon? No?
I mean, yeah, and it does land in that way. I mean, as relevant as it is, I do like that we're at the point where we can kind of make fun or poke fun at some of these character types. But, and we're wrapping up, but I am curious just about Sam Richardson and Milana Weintraub, and I know I'm butchering her name. But how much did they arrive on set in that character? How much of them is coming through in that character, as much as you can say? Because I know Sam also worked as an executive producer on this film, and I did read a quote where he said, "This was me on the page." So can you speak to that, how these actors really were, to some degree, those characters?
For the most part, I mean, Wayne Duvall certainly is no manga man, but boy, does he play him well. Big part of my job is communicating with my cast, not only in asking them how do they like to be directed, how do you like to be spoken to, sort of cataloging, the psychological cogs of your troupe to make sure that everyone's going to get the best experience of it and thus give the best performance. But you have conversations about character with people and choices, and me sort of saying, how far is too far, how far is not enough, and playing second base coach. It's kind of what a director's job is when you're casting it correctly. They all came with terrific ideas, and so much of what I was doing was simply molding. It's, mild conversations, honestly. Being at the kind of, the nucleus of all of it. Like, that is who Sam is. Sam is a genuine, warm human being who wants to do good for other people and expects people to do good in return. And like we all do, like all of us, nice human beings and kind human beings, polite human beings, boy, is it frustrating when we're not met with that same politeness. And, in a film about newcomers and out of towners, I think it adds, all to the more relevance that here we have, Sam Richardson playing our hero, who for many different reasons other than me can come into a situation being polite and expecting people to hopefully be good in return. But oh my gosh, the textures and allegory and layers of it all for, people to be passive aggressive and making shitty comments, and him sort of, wrestling with his putting his foot down and, using his voice and tapping into his authority and wrestling with that. It's really, really fascinating.
And Mishna, I was wondering, from your perspective, what were the pleasant surprises of the actors compared to what you wrote on the page, and who are the ones that totally fit your expectations of the characters as you were writing them?
I think Wayne Duvall totally fit my expectations of who that guy would be. I think he was loosely based on Rex Tillerson. So I felt like Catherine really fit my expectations of sort of who I was seeing. Milana totally fit my expectations. I think a big surprise was Sarah and George. They just came in with such stellar chemistry, and they just interacted with each other in such a organic way that it was way more than I was expecting. And it was like so alive and vibrant and natural that I was like, this isn't what I wrote. These guys are amazing. They just have a physicality too, especially George is so physical. It's just bananas. There was a lot of surprises too. I mean, it's all like better than you expect. And when you watch your words come out of someone else's mouth, you're like, oh yeah, actors, they're good at what they do.
I mean, I have to say both a credit to the writing and the directing and the performances is that with each of these pods of people, something I really liked is that, and again, I think this leads to the potential of each of them potentially being the werewolf. But as I'm watching each of their performances, I'm thinking there is a whole other story over there that I kind of want to go follow. These characters have this full life and story, and it's probably messy, but I kind of want to go check that out too. So it really came across in the film that they were fully developed, and I would almost watch a spinoff of any of them. I don't know that that's in the works, but maybe would you ever consider a return to Beaverton? Are there more tales to be told in Beaverton? Other threats that might come to town?
It's Beaverfield.
Beaverfield, sorry.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to revisit Beaverfield. I think there might be some fun origin stories.
I think we should do the Twin Peaks, just call it Beaverfield and just do the town, maybe there's all kind of, we'll do the funny Castle Rock,
I agree.
Well, with that said, I mean, what would be another kind of, what's sort of next for you? Do each of you want to continue in the horror genre for another go? What are some other monsters that perhaps you would want to take on? Or so on and so forth. Ride with that. Mishna, why don't you begin on that?
I'd like to do something with like a total grotesque, like in They Live, or in also an American Werewolf in London, who blends. I think that's an interesting device, and I haven't really seen it since They Live. I'd also really be interested in, I've always wanted to do something with a lot of action, like a John Wick style, like lots and lots, like everything in the room gets used to fight. That's just something I've always had in my mind, but there's a lot more I feel like I still have to say in horror. And I would, I want to explore a lot of different tones in it.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And They Live. Yeah, that's one that's still relevant too. So I think there's more to be said with that kind of concept as well. Josh, how about you?
It's a great film. Yeah, Carpenter. Not enough Carpenter world anything. Yeah. Speaking of, I mean, I as long as they take to set up and use, I love practical effects. I'd love to lean in to grotesque as well, and grotesque practical effects like Rob Boutein's work, and see if I can somehow push the limits of boundary a bit. If I can make you laugh and actually tug at your heartstrings more, if I can pull tears, and perhaps with a family story, but also with the kind of gut wrenching or gut churning practical effects. you might see in something like District 9. I think that would be kind of wonderful. If I were to complete the sort of Cornetto trilogy between Scare Me and Werewolves, it'll probably take place in a contained location, but have some kind of ridiculous spin. But I love horror comedy. I love testing the genre, and also we're just continuing to work with actors who haven't done certain parts before, raising up other voices, giving people the opportunity to just try stuff where they haven't quite had the opportunity to play. So we'll see what vehicle that might be.
Very good. And I guess just the final question is, we are going to be having Harvey do one of these things, as well as I believe Milana. So any questions behind the scenes, little things that you think I should ask them about that might elicit a good response?
Oh man. Without giving anything away, I don't know. I mean, you could ask Harvey oh gosh, I was about to give something away. To elicit a response, just ask him who they just absolutely hated on the cast. Just be like, just be straight with me.
Go for the dirt. Gotcha.
Yeah, just said Josh said go for the dirt.
It'll get headlines.
Yeah. I want trashy TMZ werewolves. True Hollywood story. I want a mess. Yeah, an AJ Benza.
Yeah.
Expose.
It'll be biting clickbait, right?
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, with that said, I have taken up a lot of your guys' time. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on as far as Werewolves Within or any other project that you're working on that you want to talk about or mention?
Go see it in the theater.
Yeah, June 25th, VOD on July 2nd. Bring your buddies.
This is definitely one of those movies that I would say it makes me excited to be back in movie theaters. And I'm so happy that it is going to be in movie theaters. So yes, Werewolves Within, it is out on June 25th this week in theaters, and then on VOD and digital July 2nd. And I'm going to ask you guys stick around for 1 second on the other end so I can touch base with you. But director Josh Ruben of Werewolves Within, screenwriter Mishna Wolff of Werewolves Within, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thanks for bearing with the technical glitches, which is still a thing that happens in post-pandemic 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you.